Hello, this is Justin. And for those of you who like my work, please subscribe and share. And go to my Patreon and support me in my work. Today we're going to talk about LGBTQ activism. You often hear people throw around words like homophobia and transphobia. But what LGBTQ activists, particularly gender ideologists, never talk about, there's a lot of bitterness and resentment among certain LGBTQ people towards anyone who is either straight or just not actively supporting our politics, and there is substantial discrimination coming from LGBTQ people. And it's actually pretty big in certain fields like social services, the arts, academia. For example, New York City had a welfare program called HASA. If you had HIV, you got your rent paid for up to about mm, 2,000 a month, I think, for a one-bedroom apartment, $376 in cash. You got Medicaid and food stamps, but you had to be an HIV positive person. And that is because GMHC, a big AIDS services organization which historically serviced disabled people who had HIV, successfully lobbied New York City for these benefits. Now, mind you, there are plenty of other people who have major illnesses like cancer, heart attacks, strokes, physical disabilities, and GMHC in New York City's hospice office in the past declined to help them. They were only interested in HIV because it was an illness that impacted the gay community severely, but they were not interested in illnesses that hurt other people. So straight people or even LGBTQ people who had other illnesses who could be dying from those illnesses got no help from GMHC or from HASA, the city's I forget what the acronym stands for, but it's basically the city's AIDS welfare program. But what happened in July, I had been filing a lot of complaints with New York State for all sorts of discrimination, including reverse discrimination. So I filed a complaint against GMHC saying that you're only helping people with HIV is disability discrimination, and it's discrimination based on sexual orientation because you're basically helping just gay people and disproportionately gay men while ignoring other people who could be COVID-19 survivors. They could be physically disabled, they could have cancer, they could have heart attack or stroke issues or whatever. So after filing the complaint, GMHC opened almost all of its programs to helping all disabilities or people who are just generally desperately in need, except for two programs, which I think after further review from New York Human Rights Division, New York State Human Rights Division, that I think that they will open up to everyone who really needs it. And the HRA program, the HASA program on its website is basically said that it's now open to all major disabilities too. But this was an example of people within that community thinking that they were the only people who were suffering and not being concerned about other people outside of the community, which is, to me, pretty horrible. Anyone can go through bad things, but you should be able to realize it's not all about you or all about your quote unquote identity. But GMHC and HASA are not the only examples of LGBTQ discrimination in New York City. In New York City has an office, the New York City Film Fund, which they fund upcoming artists in film, theater, music. And it was literally for people who live as a woman, meaning you had to be a woman or a transgender to get the grants. They did not accept men, they did not accept straight men, or even if you were a gender conforming gay man, they didn't accept you either. You literally had to be a woman. So basically, buy your silicone implants and cut off your genitals, and you qualify for the arts program to be in film or in theater or in music. It's that insane. I filed a complaint also with the New York State Human Rights Division. I think by now they know me pretty well. They investigated, and now the program is open to both sexes and all gender identities and sexual orientations. They can't discriminate against you because you're a straight man or a masculine gay guy anymore. But those are just two programs from New York City. There are plenty of others. YWCA has housing only for women, and New York City has more than three times, according to Coalition for Homeless, more than three times the homeless men than homeless women. And this is because of anti male discrimination, or rather anti masculine male discrimination, because if you're a straight guy, or a masculine or a gender conforming gay guy, um, it's harder to get help. But, if you put on your wig, put on some lipstick and buy a dress, and you live as a woman, these programs will help you. I kid you not. On my Patreon, I have like more details in writing and more links and stuff. And at some point in the future, these cases will be decided by a judge or the commissioner, probably sometime next year, or they'll be online. The New York State Human Rights Division will post them online. I'd say within a year or so. And most of these complaints I made earlier in the year. So, for the most part, by the summer or next fall, or maybe into 2024, they'll all be online. But it's insane that you have this kind of discrimination against guys. And then, like the women's colleges, pretty much all of the women's colleges, while rejecting normal men, except men who live as women. So the women's colleges are gender ideology colleges. Transgenders and non binary people can go. So if it's a man who feels like a woman, he can get admitted. If he's a man who's happy that he's a man, he can't get in. And this is really discrimination against masculinity and men. Some of the women's colleges do accept female to male transgenders. So they're accepting everybody except the man who wants to remain a man, whether he's straight or he's gay, while glorifying everyone who's some sort of transgender or non binary. So, and you don't hear a peep from feminists out of this. The same feminists who, like Gloria Steinem, who never say anything at all about the men who are winning awards in women's sports. These are biological men who decided to live as women. In some cases, like Leah Thomas, these were failed male athletes. They were trained and worked out as men and didn't score highly as men, then decided they were women. And of course, they were the top woman, quote unquote woman. They're not women at all. And they're taking advantage of the fact that, generally speaking, men have certain advantages. They're generally taller and stronger, greater lung capacity, longer limbs, and so they're better suited to many sports than women. And so these guys are using innate biological advantages while claiming to be women and beating women who trained very hard for this, who should not have had to compete against biological men. Men and women do not belong in the same sports together because of the physical differences between men and women in terms of muscle development, bone density, and lung capacity. And I'm happy that some sports are now doing examinations. Like you have to go to a gynecologist and they examine your genitals, and they do a DNA test to find out whether you're XY, which is a male, or XX female. Because even if you've had transgender procedures, your genetic code always remains whatever you were born with. And obviously, if they do a gynecological exam, a transgender will not have ovaries or uterus, or they'll have a false penis, but it won't be a real penis, and it won't be testicles. You can't get the real genitals of the opposite sex. You can get some freak show thing that looks similar, but it's false. So yeah, I mean, you don't hear feminists opposing what is really the transgender takeover of women's sports, and that, or you don't hear them opposing that women's colleges are now actually transgender colleges. They're gender ideology colleges. And I am pretty sure that less than 2% of women go to women's colleges these days. Most women want to go to state co-ed universities. But I'm pretty sure the minority of women that goes to women's colleges, it doesn't sound like they would be that straight. I can't imagine that many straight women want to be around transgenders and non-binaries. I'd say that women's colleges are disproportionately lesbian. And I'm not hating on people who are lesbian or transgender, but I am critical of their discrimination against men, particularly straight men and gender conforming gay men. Discrimination of any kind is wrong, and it's actually illegal. So I would definitely encourage guys, if you were denied anything because of your sex, talk to your lawyers and sue. Find a lawyer. Call the State Bar Association, Google online, go to nonprofit, but do whatever you have to do to get referred to a lawyer and sue. If you're denied any kind of arts program or education or scholarship because you're a man, or alternatively, for education, you can file a complaint with OCR, Office of Civil Rights. That's the U.S. Department of Education. I have more details on my Patreon. Or you can usually complain with your state labor agency, which there are most states have agencies that investigate discrimination based on race or sex. And definitely if an arts program or a job or college denies you a scholarship or whatever benefits because you're a man, or because you are a man who wants to remain a man, you can file a complaint with the state and they'll investigate and take action. And that includes against those women's colleges who are technically co-ed. They're just co-ed with transgenders, men who want to be women, but they aren't. And they know that this is illegal. Title IX forbids sex discrimination. They did give certain private colleges the right to remain single sex in 1972, but that assumed they would remain actual, a college for biological women, not admitting men who claim to be women. So technically they're co-ed. The Title IX exemption was not intended for that. But the good news is there's a declining number of women's colleges. And because, yes, these aren't women's colleges at all. They become gender ideology colleges. And it's sort of like, I view them as sores, kind of exporting their illness across America. And I'm going to say that men should actually contact the U.S. Department of Education or their politicians to protest this anti-male discrimination, including coming from women's colleges, because this has completely taken over arts organizations. If you look at a lot of arts organizations which help outsiders get into the film industry or into theater or into music, they want you to be transgender. This is anti-male discrimination, guys. So unless you want to come out, leave your house one day and find out that all your brothers, your friends, your cousins have all been turned into transgenders with big silicone boobs, stand up to the war against men and stand up to anti-male discrimination. Fight it however you can. Do it through legal means. But fight this because you don't want to be denied yourself and told, oh, you need a loan for your small business. New York City literally had a program where to get a small business loan, you had to be a woman. Of course, I filed a complaint against that too, and it's open up to men too. But there are two programs in New York City requiring you just to get a loan for your business to be a woman. And that's absurd. And if you look at the statistics on men in college and things like that, there was definitely a move to push men out of professional positions, which we men cannot tolerate. I am for genuine equality of the sexes and genuine equal rights before the law, not giving some groups special rights and other groups putting them down because of what sex you were born or what race you were born. That's completely absurd. So I'm going to end this by saying, yeah, the Seven Sisters colleges that all accept men who want to be women, but not normal men. These colleges shouldn't even be called the Seven Sisters so much since they love transgender so much. They're really the Seven Misters colleges, not sisters, Seven Misters colleges. Okay. All right, everybody, please subscribe and share, and I'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.